Hey guys, welcome to today's video where we're going to be going over my Week 12 NFL game picks.
Before we get started, please like and subscribe. It really helps my channel grow. And
If you're new around here, I've been writing some articles for the updog.com, which is basically a sports article website where anyone under the age of 21 can post articles on any sports topics that they're interested in. If you want to go check that out in the link down below in the description. You can write for it too if you're under 21. But now let's just dive into the video, and I hope you enjoy it. So let's dive right in. Here are the games for Week 12. We're going to start with the Thanksgiving games, and we're going to dive right into Houston and Detroit. I'm going to give Houston the victory in this one. Against a Lions team that's 4-6 right now. Houston is obviously 3-7, but I think Houston coming off a pretty solid win last week against New England, a solid football team in New England. They're a solid team. The Lions got shut out against the Panthers last week, and Matt Stafford has struggled. Obviously, the Lions do play every single Thanksgiving Day. They're in the first game on Thanksgiving, and at the end of the day, I just think Houston with Deshaun Watson has a little bit more firepower, and they're going to really try and get to 4-7 in this game, and I think at the end of the day, they will win. I don't really think the Lions have a good shot against this Houston team. I'm a little bit worried about their defense. Obviously, their offense struggled last week, and I just think Houston, coming off a big win, has the momentum to get the win in Detroit. Now, though, let's move on to Washington and the Cowboys. So here's Washington and the Cowboys, right? This is going to be a big game for the NFC East. Both teams are obviously 3-7, but at the end of the day, I think Dallas is going to lose this game. So I know this game's in Dallas, but I just like Washington. Alex Smith is playing out of his mind right now. Carried Washington to a big win last week against the Bengals. Although the Cowboys do have Andy Dalton back and Zeke is looking a little bit better, and maybe Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, they're finding their groove. But I just like Washington's defense too. They've got a good front four, guys like Ryan Kerrigan, Chase Young. But at the end of the day, I think that pass defense, too, has been really solid. They've been in the top 5 of the NFL so far this season. In pass defense, they're sneaky good at that position. And I think that they can hold down the fort when it comes to the Cowboys' offense. Offensively, though, I mean, Terry McLaurin and Antonio Gibson look like really, really good players for this Washington team. And if Alex Smith can just pass the ball around, I think they're going to win this game. Yes, the Cowboys' offense is pretty solid. Although Andy Dalton does raise a few question marks, he had a really good performance against the Vikings last week. But at the end of the day, I just don't think that defense is going to be enough to hold down this Washington team. I think it's going to be a close game, but I think Washington will take the win. So far, if you look at our big board of games, we have Houston taking a win and Washington taking a win. Now let's go to the primetime Thanksgiving game in between the Steelers and the Ravens. So obviously, huge game in the AFC North. So obviously, Steelers coming into the game at 10-0, Ravens at 6-4, coming off a very disappointing loss last week against the Tennessee Titans. And I hate to say it, but I think the Steelers are going to win this one. I think the Steelers are just fantastic this season. They've won a lot of close games, but they've also taken care of business. Last week, they really beat that Jags team handily, won 27-3. I don't think the defenses will be the story of this game. I think it will be the offenses. Both teams have solid defenses. The Steelers obviously have a top 10 defense. So do the Ravens. Both are fantastic on the defensive side of the football. But I think it's what offense can do more damage. And I think the Steelers simply have a better offense than the Ravens. Lamar Jackson just has not looked great this year. And at the end of the day, I think the Ravens will lose, move to 6-5, and the Steelers will move on to 11-0. Now, though, let's move on to the Bills and the Chargers, which is going to be our first Sunday game. So the Bills and the Chargers here, really interesting one. I think that the Bills will win this one, but it's not going to be as one-sided as people might think. Justin Herbert is playing electric football right now. So I think the Chargers will be in this game, but their defense is going to let them down. For the Bills, Josh Allen has been fantastic. Stephon Diggs has been fantastic. And although that defense has not been as good as it was supposed to be coming into this year, they're still going to play well. I mean, Josh Allen is throwing for hundreds of yards each game. He's using his legs really effectively, and he's playing at a top level. So at the end of the day, I think the Bills will move to 8-3. The Chargers will move to 3-8. But this is going to be a very interesting game to watch, especially in Buffalo. It'll be interesting to see how the Chargers come into Buffalo, play in a tough place to play. And Justin Herbert, he's been playing really well, so I think it'll be a tough matchup. It'll be a close matchup, and I think it'll be very interesting between Justin Herbert and Josh Allen, seeing similar styles of play. Both are mobile quarterbacks, both have big arms, and that's something I've said on my channel for a while now, the comparisons between the two, so I think this will be a very interesting game, seeing how similar they are and how similar they play. But at the end of the day, I think the Bills will take the win here. So let's just go back to our big board of things right now. I have the Texans winning, obviously, Washington, Steelers, and the Bills. Now let's move on to the Titans and the Colts. I'm going to have the Colts over the Titans in this one. Both teams came off huge wins last week. Obviously, the Colts beat the Packers, and the Titans beat the Ravens. I think that the Colts defense is going to be the difference maker in this game. Both teams have solid offenses. I mean, the Colts have struggled at times getting it going, but I think they still have a solid offense. I mean, it's not anything special, but it's not one of the worst in the NFL. The Titans obviously have a great offense with Tannehill and Derrick Henry, but the Indianapolis Colts are such a good defense where I think that defense is really going to shut down Derrick Henry. It's going to shut down Ryan Tannehill, and I think they'll get the win. This is a really important game for the AFC playoff picture. Both teams are 7-3. So at the end of the day, I think that the Titans will lose this one. They'll move to 7-4. The Colts will move to 8-3. I mean, what will be a very important game for the rest of the season and the rest of that division, how that division will turn out come on playoff time. Now, though, let's move on to the next matchup, which is going to be between the Vikings and the Panthers. This is a very interesting one here. I wanted to go with the Panthers originally taking the win, but I think the Vikings are going to win this one. Right now, the Vikings are 4-6. The Panthers are 4-7. They have not had their bye week yet, which is very interesting. Obviously, the Panthers are a little banged up. They're not 100% healthy. They've had some injury concerns. And at the end of the day, I think what comes down to it is how the Panthers are a bottom 5 run defense in the NFL, and the Vikings are one of the best run-heavy offenses in the NFL. Dalvin Cook is playing out of his mind right now. If you guys play fantasy football, you know that Dalvin Cook is carrying your fantasy teams right now. And Dalvin Cook against that Panthers defensive line scares me. I think he's going to run all over them, and I think this could be a bloodbath for the Panthers defensive line. I still think it'll be close, but I think it's going to be a high-scoring game, but the Vikings will win it. It comes down to the run game, and Dalvin Cook is simply a great running back who is going to terrorize that Panthers defensive line. So if we look at the Panthers-Vikings game in Week 12, I want to give the Vikings the win. Now, though, let's go back to the big board, just check it out for a second. Now, though, let's move on to the Cleveland Browns and Jags game on Sunday. I don't want to spend too much time here on the Cleveland and Jags game. I think it's going to be pretty straightforward, but at the end of the day, I think that the Cleveland Browns will come out with the win, going to a Jacksonville team that has not played good football this season. Obviously, they won their first game, but since they have not won a game, they're 1-9. The Browns are 7-3. It's really that simple. The Browns just have a good football team playing good defensive football. They're going to shut down the Jags, and I don't think this one will really be a competition. Now, though, let's go back to the big board to see where we're at. And we're going to be moving on to the Giants and Bengals. This is going to be an interesting game here. Obviously, no Joe Burrow anymore. Burrow is now out for the season with a season-ending knee injury. So I think the Giants will win this one. I like how the Giants are playing right now. I think they're really only one of the teams in the NFC East that I can see getting better throughout the season. I don't think the Eagles are going to get better this year. I don't really think the Cowboys will get better. But at the end of the day, maybe Washington can get better. I think they have a pretty good team, a good young team that might be able to improve. But I like the Giants here. I think they're in a solid spot. They've got some weapons on offense. Daniel Jones is playing some good football. But James Bradberry is really carrying that defense. When it comes to the Giants, right, I mean, I think they'll be able to beat the Bengals. This Bengals team won't have Joe Mixon. They won't have Joe Burrow. Ryan Finley at quarterback. That scares me a little bit. I just don't think they'll be able to have the leadership and the firepower to win. Now, though, let's move on to the next team. Let's just look at the big board for a second here. It's going to be the Cardinals and the Patriots. Another Sunday game here for us. So the Cardinals and the Patriots here. I think the Cardinals will be able to win this one pretty handily. Yes, the Patriots have had some good wins. Obviously, they beat the Ravens a few weeks ago. They only lost to the Texans by 7 last week, but I think the Cardinals will just be a better team here. They are a highly explosive and powerful football team, and Kyler Murray is playing like an MVP candidate. He's got DeAndre Hopkins next to him, and even that run game has gotten going a little bit. But at the end of the day, I just think the Cardinals are scoring so many points that the Patriots offense won't be able to catch up because I don't feel like they have a lot of weapons on the offensive side of the ball. That scares me a little bit. Now, though, let's move on to the Dolphins and the Jets here. But first, let's just take a look at the big board to see where we're at. Have obviously the Cardinals winning that game. So, Dolphins-Jets, I think this might be one of the easier ones of the week. I'm going to give the Dolphins the win. I think this is pretty straightforward. I mean, the Jets are 0-10. They're the worst football team in the NFL. And although the Dolphins did come off a pretty heartbreaking loss to the Broncos last week on a Ryan Fitzpatrick interception, just a bad game from them. Did not really game plan well, didn't really execute well, didn't even have a sack all game, gave up 6 sacks. I mean, they were just manhandled. Hopefully a comeback week for them going into New York, playing the Jets. As I said, worst team in the NFL. This is going to need to be a game where the Dolphins capitalize and try and get back into the playoff picture. Right now, I think they're 8th or 9th in the AFC, so they're knocking on the door, but this is a game where they absolutely have to take care of business. But I think the Dolphins will win this one pretty easily. Now, though, just before we go to the Raiders-Falcons, I just want to give you a look at the big board. We've got 6 matchups left, and let's dive into the Raiders and the Falcons here. So Raiders-Falcons, the Falcons have been scoring a lot of points, but I think some of their playmakers aren't 100% healthy. I mean, Julio last week had that little bit of that hamstring injury. We'll see if he's good to go on Sunday. But at the end of the day, right, the Raiders are playing some awesome football. They lost to the Chiefs last Sunday, but that was a really close game. Came down to the wire. They were running the football well. Derek Carr is playing really well too. They're playing good, solid football, and I think they'll be able to beat the Falcons. The Falcons are 3-7, and I don't think they'll be able to compete with a solid Raiders team. Now, though, just before we move on to the next one, just want to take a look at that big board there. Next matchup, obviously, is going to be Saints and the Broncos. So, Broncos had a big win last week against the Dolphins, showed up defensively with those 6 sacks, and really pressured Tua. Chased him out of the game, got Fitzpatrick into the game, and had a game-winning interception against him. That defense was fantastic, but I think the Saints' offense is just so much better. I don't care who's playing quarterback there, but Taysom Hill looked fantastic last week. Michael Thomas looks like himself again. And if Michael Thomas can get going, the Saints team is a lock for the playoffs. And honestly, I could say that they could be a lock for that first seed if Michael Thomas can get going. They've got one of the best defenses in the NFL. They're playing at a high level. And at the end of the day, I think the Saints team will be able to easily beat the Broncos next week, even though they'll be playing in Denver. Now, though, let's move on to the Rams and the 49ers. Here's a look at the big board before we get into the Rams and the 49ers. And I'm going to give the Rams the win in LA. So, obviously, the 49ers have been pretty banged up this year, and I think that is going to really stop them from being able to be a legitimate contender for the playoffs. I think if they lose this game, they'll move to 4-7, and at that point, I don't think they'll be able to make the playoffs. The Rams, good football team. Jared Goff is playing some good football this season. Yes, he's had a few rough games, but he's got weapons, and this 49ers team is just not healthy. I mean, with some of their big offensive names injured, and when they lost those big defensive players too early in the season, you just knew that they weren't going to be able to compete for the rest of the season. So I think the Rams will win this one in LA. I just like this Rams team. I think they're playing some pretty solid football. And at the end of the day, I think they've had a good season so far, so I think they can continue that against the 49ers. Now, though, let's look on just the big board for a second. You can see my picks there. And now let's go to the Chiefs and the Bucs. So the Chiefs and the Bucs here, very interesting matchup. The Bucs are playing some very bipolar football, like very bipolar football. I mean, obviously they lost big time to the Saints a few weeks ago, but yet they still like completely destroyed the Packers. Like, they're a very up and down team, and I think when you're going against the Chiefs, you cannot afford to be an up and down team, right? Tom Brady is a great quarterback. He's got great weapons over there, but at the end of the day, Patrick Mahomes is a different breed. He just is. That Chiefs offense is a juggernaut, and that Chiefs team is a juggernaut too. Andy Reid is calling the shots there, and he's doing his job. I think the Bucs will put up a fight, but some games they play well, some games they don't play well, and they just need more consistency. So maybe if the Bucs were playing a little bit more of a consistent brand of football, maybe I would have given them a sleeper pick here, but I think the Chiefs are just going to be too much to handle for this Buccaneers team. Now, though, let's move on to the Packers and the Bears. That's the big board there again. Once again, if you want to see my picks. So let's go to the Packers and the Bears. This is going to be the Sunday night football game, and I think this is going to be a very good one. But I'm going to have the Packers winning this one over the Bears. And I think it comes down to this. The Packers' offense is better than the Bears' offense, right? And at the end of the day, you need to score points to win football games. And the Bears' offense has been terrible. It just has. They haven't been able to play really solid football on the opposite side of the football. I mean, Allen Robinson has been one of the only bright spots on that team, but Nick Foles has not played well, and the offensive line just looks terrible, and they're just not getting production, right? Defensively, they've been solid. I mean, they're one of the better defenses in the NFL, and they've got some star power on that defensive line, in those linebacking cores, and even in the secondary. But at the end of the day, it's Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, and that Packers team with Aaron Jones, too, on that offense that is just going to be too much to handle. Plus, it's not like the Packers defense is completely terrible. I mean, it's not a great defense. They gave up 34 to the Colts last week, who have had some offensive struggles this season. But at the end of the day, I just think the Packers offense will be able to outplay and really match up well against that Bears team. So let's take one more trip to the big board, and now let's move on to the Monday Night Football game between the Seahawks and the Eagles. So Seahawks and Eagles here, I think this is going to be a no-brainer. I think the Seahawks will win this one pretty handily over an Eagles team that's been struggling. I mean, Carson Wentz is playing some terrible football right now. I'm just going to come out and say that. Sorry, Eagles fans. He's just been trash. He's literally been terrible. Last week, he tried to throw a check down to Miles Sanders that ended up getting picked off for a pick six. Like, you've got to play better football. You can't miss your checkdowns. You've got to play solid football, and the Eagles just aren't doing that right now. They're behind in games. And a Seahawks team that has struggled of late, obviously Russell Wilson has not been playing up to his standard that he did earlier this season. But I mean, it's still the Seahawks, it's still Russell Wilson, and DK Metcalf has been fantastic, and so has Tyler Lockett this season. So I think that Seahawks offense will just be too much for the Eagles to handle. And even though the Seahawks defense has been a little bit shaky, I think bringing Carlos Dunlap was huge for them, and I think he's going to just shut down this Eagles offense. I mean, Dunlap is a solid guy to have, although Jamal Adams has been up and down too. They still got Bobby Wagner. They've still got playmakers. And at the end of the day, the Seahawks are just simply a better team than the Eagles. I don't care that this game's going to be in Philadelphia. The Seahawks are just a better football team. So with that said, we are going to end my Week 12 game picks video. So obviously I have the Texans winning, Washington winning, the Steelers winning, the Bills winning, Colts winning, Vikings winning, as well as the Browns, Giants, Cardinals, Dolphins, Raiders, Saints winning. And then to round it out, we've got the Rams beating the Niners, the Chiefs beating the Bucks, the Bears losing to the Packers, and the Seahawks beating the Eagles. So there we go. Those are my Week 12 game picks. What do you think about them? Leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. And at the end of the day, I hope you enjoyed the video. And until next time, see ya.